Hi, I'm Camilla Powell, Head of Product at Disguise, and I'm also joined here today by Peter Kirkup, our Director of Innovation. We're going to be talking to you about some exciting updates that we've got. They're all around reducing barriers, whether that's barriers to usability, barriers to workflows, and also barriers to deployment. So looking forward to telling you all about them in this session today. So, Peter, we launched Ascaden in April with the ability to ask questions, but the vision's always been bigger than that, right? Can you explain or remind us what the vision is?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked a little bit about this in April when we were talking about Ascaden the first time, that what we see is the ability for AId3n to become a workflow tool for designer users. And what we mean by that is that not just retrieving knowledge from the user guide and answering questions for users, but actually getting into how are they interacting with the project and unlocking the ability for the AI to help you interact with the project in certain ways. So a good example of that might be an award show where you've got a repetitive sort of set of sequencing, a nominee list followed by the announcement of the award winner, followed by the celebration, and that sort of repeats throughout the ceremony. And sequencing that might become quite repetitive in Designer. You end up with a lot of sections that are almost the same, but just a small content tweak in each one. Using the power of Ask AId3n, what we're building is the ability for you to tell the AI to do that sequencing. So you could tell it, build me 30 sections in the timeline that look like this and have this composition of layers. And then it can reach into your project file and actually make those changes by generating Python code. So we've trained it on all of the Python capabilities that we unlocked through the plugin system. And now we can leverage that inside the designer software.
Wow, so that's going to really speed up programming, right? Because then Ascaden is basically getting rid of a lot of the rigmarole and the repetitiveness of the tasks, right? So
yeah, that's the intention, is that a programmer will be able to spend more time thinking about the creative outcome. So ask the AI to do the thing that you need, and then look at the screens, look at the pixels, make sure that the picture looks the way you want it to.
And so can you reuse these scripts, or how does that work?
That's right. So we built the ability for you to save out those scripts. So again, that award show example, you've done that in one job, you move on to the next job, you've got a very similar structure. You can actually just bring the script with you, run it again and iterate. And of course, those scripts won't just be creating an award show. You might have little helper functions that do specific things that you need in your personal workflow. And those become almost the building blocks of building a show for you.
Well, I think this is going to really change the way people interact with Designer and the way that they build shows.
Definitely. I'm really excited to get this into people's hands and get them using it.
Yeah, can't wait. And so there's a lot of stuff online about different types of AI models. I guess you've probably tested different ones. What type is it using? Where is that running?
Yeah, so initially when we built Ask AId3n, we focused on local LLM models, and that's powerful for the chat retrieval type of interactions. For the code generation, we are having to lean into a cloud-based model. So this is now going to be running in a cloud instance, which means that you do need internet connectivity to make that work. But that is something that we believe is the right design choice for the power that it unlocks. We're actually going to be using the Google Gemini 2.5 models, which are brand new models that have been brought out to the marketplace to do this type of task. They have massive context windows, up to 1 million tokens if you're into how the AI infrastructure works. And we're doing this all securely through authenticated accounts. Users' credentials will be kept securely within our environment, and the code generation is all run through various validations and also tied into all of the undo stacks inside Designer. So you're not gonna be risking the project file. Do understand that cloud connectivity always comes with a level of uneasiness. So play with this in your Designer instance on your laptop rather than going straight to the servers if you're more comfortable that way. But that is the world that we are building out with this new cloud models, which we think is going to unlock huge amounts of new capabilities for users.
But running this AI in the cloud, that must be costing someone some money somewhere. So how is that going to work?
Yeah, so there is a small cost for each time you generate one of these functions. And so what we'll be doing is giving a number of function generations, as we call them, through your Designer Pro subscription. So you'll get a number of function generations every month, and that will refresh as you go through your monthly payments. And that will allow you to generate the functions and then use them inside your account.
Wow, okay. Yeah, that's great for Designer Pro. And then for people on Disguise servers, again, you did recommend that with it being connected to the internet, Designer Pro is the best place for people to be doing this?
That's right. We can still send the API commands into the servers if we want to, but we can direct them onto editors as well if needed.
So in terms of accessing Ascaden is a plugin, right? Can you remind us about the plugin framework and how you get plugins?
That's right. So Ascaden is one of the plugins that you add to your Designer project. You can get all of the plugins through the user guide. There's a set of links in there. And we've updated that, or we will update that with the links to the new version when it's ready.
And the plugins are changing slightly in R31, right, in terms of accessibility to those plugins in Starter?
Yeah, so initially plugins were only available for Designer Pro users and server hardware, but we'll be unlocking the ability for Starter users also to get familiar with the plugin system. So they'll be able to open plugins, and people who are developing plugins who maybe don't want to subscribe to Designer Pro because they're a software engineer, they're not using this all the time, we'll unlock that in the Designer Starter license as well.
Oh, I mean, that's amazing. Hopefully that will really encourage even more people to develop plugins now that you can access plugins in Starter for R31. But,
yeah, we've already been seeing some amazing examples, and I can't wait to see where people take this now.
And so just to clarify, Ascaden specifically is a plugin on Starter?
So it will not be available on Starter because of that AI cost on the inference, so you will need to be a pro subscriber to use Ascaden.
Right, got it. So just in summary, plugins available in Starter from R31, but Ascaden specifically is Designer Pro due to the additional costs incurred.
That's right.
And we've got a really cool plugin coming in the form of a mobile app, right?
Yeah, so we've developed an app for the iOS devices, which allows you to access your Designer plugins on your mobile device. And one of the reasons that we've built this whole plugin infrastructure is to allow people to take tasks that maybe are focused on the operator in front of the Designer interface and actually extract them away to other locations inside the production facility. So you might have an iPad that you're giving to a DOP if you're in a virtual production scenario where they can make adjustments to some of the color or some of the other elements within the scene. And you want to interact with that through the plugin system. So you would build a plugin in Designer. You could open it in Designer if you want to interact with it that way. But now you could also open it up on the iPad, all within the Disguise ecosystem, and be able to interact with that inside the same session and make whatever changes you need to.
That sounds so useful. I mean, it's easy to think of plugins for Designer as in Designer only, but really they're in Designer, outside a Designer on a mobile, outside a Designer on a browser, on a desktop, basically
Exactly.
any of that, but still on the plugin framework.
Yeah, and that's why we based it all on HTML technologies and so on, so that it can reach out to the entire suite of tools available on site.
Yeah, super flexible.
Yeah, that's what we're intending. So Ascaden and the plugin system are reducing barriers for customers getting into the product, allowing them to access workflows in lots of different ways. I think we've got some other developments in that space as well, right, Cam?
Yeah, absolutely. So in Designer R31, we're going to be releasing a new mode to RenderStream called RenderStream Local, which we're really excited about in terms of how that can really make RenderStream much more accessible and lowering the barriers to entry to using this powerful architecture. So just to remind people about RenderStream, so RenderStream connects Designer to real-time engines such as Unreal Engine, TouchDesigner, and others. And people often think about it in the context of Unreal Engine, but the power is so much more than that. To date, it's been used very successfully for large installations, large virtual production, large live shows, where that scalability has really been key. But RenderStream is such a powerful architecture. It seems crazy that customers and users with smaller shows, smaller installations can't get the advantage of that powerful architecture. And that's why we've introduced RenderStream Local Mode. So Local Mode allows you to run a RenderStream workload on a VX or GX server without the need for a separate render node and all the extra networking that goes with it. This makes it much easier to adopt and much simpler. This isn't to say that RenderStream on a separate render node is dead. Absolutely not. It's really not a question of local is better than remote mode or remote mode is better than local mode. It's a question of choosing the right deployment architecture for the particular show or production. The other thing about RenderStream Local Mode is we're hoping that it really encourages innovative uses of RenderStream. So, for example, Peter, you've been doing some work using RenderStream in local mode for things like relighting and depth of field with the use case of virtual production. Can you tell us a bit more of that? Because I think this really illustrates it so well.
Yeah, so we built a tool within the RenderStream suite called the RenderStream Python bindings, which allows you to write code in Python and interact with the RenderStream system. And on top of that, we've now published a set of GLSL shader bindings that allows you to load OpenGL shaders into RenderStream and run those. And on top of that, we've been building custom shaders that allow you to do things like depth of field simulation or relighting, which the GLSL shaders are very well understood. In fact, on the Innovation Hub, which we recently launched, I published a case study of using ChatGPT to generate a GLSL shader that would do one of those tasks and then run that shader inside RenderStream as a custom look for the show. And so what we're unlocking here is small creative iteration in your production using GLSL shaders or Python code that can run inside the RenderStream ecosystem. So it can be keyframed inside your project and interact with texture parameters and all the other things that you'd expect, but allow you to customize and tweak to your heart's content.
I think that's a really good example of the power of the RenderStream architecture, but for very innovative use cases. And definitely check out the innovation.disguise.one website because Peter's got great examples there on how you can use RenderStream for these innovative use cases.
Yeah, thank you. When you're running this RenderStream local mode, how can customers be confident with the performance of the system?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the performance is one of the reasons why we've always encouraged the RenderStream workloads to be running on separate render nodes. And if you want to be guaranteed of the best performance, that's definitely still the right way to go. But with GPUs becoming more powerful and the ability to use RenderStream for more lightweight workloads, as we've just been explaining, there are cases when you may not need a separate render node, but the key there is to really understanding the demands of your particular workload, and testing is key. So we really recommend absolutely testing in advance of your production to make sure that the running of the workload locally isn't going to affect the performance of the VX or GX for Designer itself. Now, you can split RenderStream local workloads across servers, just the same way that you can in remote mode. So if you're using multiple GXs or multiple VX2s, for example, then you can still split that workload across multiple machines, which will alleviate the demands on one particular server. But as I say, the key is definitely test in advance to make sure that RenderStream local mode is the right way to go.
And will it be available on all of the server models?
Yeah, so with the release in R31, it will be available on the GX servers and VX servers, except for the VX4 and the VX4 Plus. This is because we're still doing a little bit more work on VX4 and VX4 Plus in terms of support with AMD GPU. It's not available on the EX range.
How are we going to license RenderStream Local? Licensed?
Yeah, so it's licensed in exactly the same way as regular RenderStream. So RenderStream license, just deploy that RenderStream license on the VX or GX, just the same way that you can do with a GX today already, and then that will enable RenderStream local mode.
And finally, we've made an exciting new update to the EX range. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so I said no RenderStream Local on the EX range, and that is true, but we are allowing the use of TouchDesigner on the EX, which has been integrated using the RenderStream Local architecture. Now, this is because the EX is designed for experiences and live, where using TouchDesigner is something that we're gaining a lot of customers asking for. So you can, with the EX, use your real-time connector license from R31 to enable the use of TouchDesigner via that same RenderStream Local architecture.
That's pretty cool.
I think it's going to open up a lot of possibilities. There is one other update on the EX range that I'd also like to mention, and this is about enabling color management, so ASUS and OCIO on the EX range. This is something we've done in response to listening to our customers who have said, look, we really like the EX, but using ASUS or OCIO is becoming very important to us. Why can't we do that on the EX range? So from R31, there's an additional functional unlock license, like the real-time connector license, but for ASUS and OCIO, which can be added to the EX servers if using ASUS or OCIO is really important to your workflows. To access all the updates that we've been talking about today, you can download Designer R31 from the usual places. So that's either in Disguise Cloud or from our user guide platform. And then the plugins are also available in our user guide platform in the plugin gallery. It's all been about reducing barriers, and we're going to have more updates coming soon on a similar theme, so stay tuned.